You are about to enter the Shockwave Skull Sessions podcast on shockwaveskullsessions.com. And now your host, Bob Nalbandian.
Sure. All right. Well, here we go. Shockwave Skull Sessions episode number 44, I believe 44, this is, right?
Yeah. We took a little hiatus, didn't we?
Yeah, we were out for a couple weeks there just because of holidays and stuff, but we're back, and we'd like to welcome our special guest to this one, Mr. ERIK KLUIBER from VOID VATOR, and well, he's from a lot of bands, but we'll go through them as we do this podcast. But what's going on, ERIK, man? Thanks for coming, man. Thanks for coming on.
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me.
Dude, thanks for coming on. We saw you. We were just talking about it. What was that club in San Francisco?
Bottom of the Hill, San Francisco.
Great little club, man.
Mm-hmm. Bottom of the Hill. Yeah, that was my first time playing there.
Yeah, with Slow Fag.
It's like that. Great show, great bands, great sound, great staff.
Yeah.
That was an awesome night. What a fun metal show, man.
Yeah, that was a great show. Was it Sanhedrin? That was a
Sanhedrin and
awesome
Slow Fag, man.
Yeah.
Slow Fag were killer. The whole package was
Slow
great.
Fag and Sanhedrin. Great bands. Back when I was in GYPSYHAWK, we used to listen to Slow Fag in the van.
Yeah.
Really?
They've been around a while, man.
Mm-hmm.
Hell yeah, man. So, I mean, yeah, so let's talk about a little bit about what's going on with you guys. I mean, I guess we can get into VOID VATOR. Obviously, you guys just re-released Stranded on Ripple back in early November, man. So, how's everything going with that so far? You guys touring? You guys looking to tour soon, or what's going on with the band right now?
We're looking to tour soon. We're going to get out and do a couple showcases at South by Southwest and route a tour around it.
Right. Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'm working with my booking agent, Nick Harris, right now. He just moved on to the Atomic Music Group. And we're going to do 2.5/3 weeks, and do, like I said, those South by Southwest showcases, and then get up to the Midwest, do a show in Detroit, and come home.
Very cool.
Now, you're from the Detroit area originally, right?
Yeah, that was my main headquarters for – like growing up and et cetera. I moved around, but that was my main place. I went to high school, and then I moved around a little bit. And then like the 10 years before I moved to LA, I was in Detroit trying to make it happen. So that's home base.
So what brought you to LA? Was it Holy Grail, not Holy Grail, White Wizard?
It was White Wizard. Exactly. I was the end of the line had come as far as what I was doing up in Detroit, and I could see the writing on the wall. So I'd always kind of wished I had lived in LA. I got to live in Tustin for 1.5 years as a kid, and I loved it. And obviously watching movies like The Decline of Western Civilization and all the history.
Yeah.
So I picked up Craigslist, and I looked at every major city I could think of in the United States, but the ad that just jumped out at me was this ad for White Wizard. And at the time, trying to think what year that was 2008. I think the summer of 2008 or the fall. I think the fall of 2008 when I saw the ad. Mm-hmm. And it was rare to see a band that would list bands like Iron Maiden and Thin Lizzy and Judas Priest in their influences. Because at the time, it was still a lot of new metalcore.
Sure.
Bands like Lamb of God. Those were what was
the flavor of the week, yeah.
Yeah. And so that immediately caught my attention, and they had released a killer video directed by this guy, Davey Voorhees, for High Speed GTO. So both the song and the video were amazing. And, I reached out and like, he was like, yeah, come on by. I spoke with dude and answered the phone. It was John, the bass player. He said, yeah, come on by this Thursday. I'm like, well, I'm in Detroit, but I'm really serious. And so what I did is I did a YouTube. Like I learned that song and by ear and another tune. And then I had a friend come over, and this is kind of like I didn't have a smartphone. Not everybody did back then, but just had my friend videotape it and sent it to him. And he's like, dude, that's great. And I flew out, and I got the gig in White Wizard, and that's what brought me out to L.A.
Wow. It's funny you mentioned Decline of Western Civilization, because that movie introduced me to that Detroit band Seduce. I had never heard of them before, and I guess they were quite a big band but they were one of the cooler bands in that movie.
They were.
And on the soundtrack, that song Colleen, that's such a heavy production. Super raw, heavy. Yeah. Were they quite a big? I think they were on IRS. That same IRS Metal did absolutely nothing. Yeah, they couldn't do. They couldn't break any bands. But were they a fairly big band up there? Or what was the scene like in Detroit back in the? I guess.
It would have been the late
80s. Yeah, right.
Well, what you're talking about is
the late 80s. Yeah.
And then I kind of took off after I graduated high school and moved around a bit, went down to Atlanta. And I think during the 90s, they kind of faded away like a lot of heavy metal did. Mm-hmm. If you remember when there was a real low point as far as a lot of people were thinking bands even like Iron Maiden and Judas Priest were not going to be able to continue. I saw Iron Maiden on that tour in Atlanta at the Masquerade, if you ever been there.
Is that with Blaze Bayley?
Yeah, with Blaze Bayley.
Yeah, they did. Dude, they were doing. Well, no, they didn't do House of Blues, but they did the Universal Amphitheater, which is about 6,000.
Yeah,
and they didn't even sell it out. It was like,
for Iron Maiden, that's nothing, right?
And even Judas Priest with Ripper Owens, they were doing House of Blues shows. So
right. So that era, that's when I went down to Atlanta. I came back in the late 90s, and kind of the resurgence of heavy metal was almost like a 2005 type of thing, as far as like the 80s metal coming back, when all these bands would reunite and kind of had a second wind. But they still do. Seduce still does a reunion show, and they sell out the Token Lounge, which is like 800 people every time they play. So it's like they, like a lot of bands, kind of had a resurgence, and they're a big loyal fan following up there.
Nice, man. So. So what are some of your influences? I mean, obviously Detroit, the Michigan area. I mean, you've got so many classic bands. I mean, you go back to obviously
the old
MC5 and the Stooges and Ted Nugent, Alice Cooper. Obviously the classic ones for me. I mean, was that? I mean, like you said, I know you moved around a lot.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. So what are your influences? Because you've definitely got like your very unique kind of guitar style. I mean, when I listen to like GYPSYHAWK stuff and even VOID VATOR and stuff, I mean, you definitely have like me and Bob were listening to some GYPSYHAWK, and we were just listen to a lot of obviously Thin Lizzy,
absolutely
influences and that and stuff. So what are some of your influences?
So Thin Lizzy meets Metallica was kind of the GYPSYHAWK thing. Now, like my generation, a lot of the artists that you're talking about, their heyday was in the 70s.
Yeah.
So when I was coming up, and I was actually like kind of really got into music when I was living in Texas, which was like 83, back when MTV, and just before MTV like hit. But so it was a bit different, where like a lot of the Midwest people, and maybe it's a cultural thing, but definitely like United States or even global, but a lot of the big four I grew up on. A lot of the kick-ass 80s metal bands, including Cinderella and Ozzy and Dokken, those were great. Love AC/DC. My top like legacy act bands would be Megadeth, Guns N' Roses, AC/DC. That would be a top three. Nice. And so a lot of guitar players from the 80s. And I'm not stuck on that, but to talk about those players in particular, they learned their licks from dudes from the 70s, and then like kind of stacked the shred on top of it, so they still had a lot of substance. And that's really important to me as a guitar player, is making phrases and statements. The blues is really important. A lot of substance over flash, and I like players like that. Once it gets all about just technicality, sweep arpeggios, that stuff puts me to sleep, man.
Sure, yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, exactly.
And there's still a lot of players, especially in the YouTube community, where it's this kind of like jerk off competition. It's been that way for a while. I mean, that shit kind of peaked in the 90s, and I mean, how much faster can you go? How much sweepier can you go?
That was a big thing, yeah.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah, and all the I went to the Atlanta Institute of Music. I've tried my best to be as good of a player as I can, and so like in the early 90s, you had still VHS tapes and your Paul Gilbert stuff and your Richie Kotzens and
the Hot Licks, right? Wasn't it Hot Licks?
That was one of them for sure. That was one of them for sure, man. But that being said, I like some speed, and I like intensity and power, but I like bands where I hate when you go and see a band and the guitar player might be doing something, And now sometimes it's the mix, but if you're not nailing it, if you're just like slopping out notes or it's unintelligible, that does nothing for me. You know, it might look cool on stage. I want something that you can sing. That's like the oldest rule in the book, like solos that you can sing back. Guys like Randy Rhoads nailed that. Like I think guys like Randy and Marty Friedman, Chris Poland, I think they took solos, in my opinion, to kind of, that's about as technical as you can get, and keeping the melody and the substance in there.
Well, it's tasty. It's still tasty. It comes from like the Michael Schenker, school of music, and that's you could be a complete shredder, but if you don't have those, if they don't mean something, if they don't say something, and it's just a matter of being classy and tasty and just making it work with a song. A lot of these guitar solos, they're just showing off. They don't really fit the structure of the song.
Exactly. I think, Eric, you just made a good point. You said you can actually, it's those guitar solos that you could sing back. Like, well, the thing is, we just had a podcast recently with and we were talking about this kind of same thing with the YouTube stars and how, and it was, and basically a couple of these guys were saying, that they had these little school, these academies right down in LA there, Scooney G and Spacey T. And basically they're saying it's the same thing. Like, yeah, these kids rip, but to get them to play together with a band of a bunch of people, they have no clue what to fucking do. It's just like,
different. Yeah, I listened to that episode and they make up a great point. There's a big difference between a basement shredder and a performer.
Well, unfortunately, that's how the players learn now. It's all through YouTube videos and stuff, and they're just bedroom players. They play in their own bedroom, and they might be able to shred. And you always see these young kids, these virtuoso kids, playing along with John Bonham or whatever, some 12-year-old Japanese girl or something. Say, oh wow, but can she play with a band and create stuff? I mean, that's what music is. It's not just emulating. Anyone now, you could, back in the day, you talk about hot licks. That was like a brand new invention. The video, the teacher with a guy, because before you had to, listen off vinyl. You had to take the needle off and listen again. And you had no videos. The only time you could watch stuff is, seeing your favorite band, if they popped up on MTV or even before then on the Don Kirshner's rock concert or whatever.
Sure, I had Friday night videos.
Yes.
Living in Texas. That was my first introduction to the music video, and it was pretty exciting time. Yeah, it's amazing how the players from the 60s and the 70s, I was just saying, like with just vinyl, not even cassette tapes, like learning those licks note for note. It's kind of like trying to imagine a world without GPS. Like, how did people get around?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. But it's going to be interesting. It's kind of a beautiful world in a lot of ways. Like, there's so many advantages. Even just the snark tuners that you can clip on the headstock of your guitar, incredible. I wish we had those back in the day, right?
Oh yeah,
sure,
just convenient and fun. Although they look terrible, don't ever use them on stage. It's like my biggest pet peeves. It looks so nerdy. But it'll be interesting to see what happens to these little virtuosos, because is that it, as far as, is that the goal? Which some people, I think, are really happy kind of just filming stuff on YouTube, and that's the extent of it. Or do they go on to, because being in a band is a completely different experience.
They probably make more money posting on YouTube than being in an actual band and performing.
Exactly. No, exactly. Yeah, that's true.
They could, man. That's everybody wants. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see. But I know, as far as, I love being in a band. I love just the entire culture around it.
Sure.
Like from rehearsing to traveling and meeting new people, and the adventure of not knowing what's, it's not a day-to-day routine. Every single day is new.
Spontaneous.
And, very much so. And I just feel like it's, some people have that itch in their body to travel, and some people are homebodies and are totally cool with that. They never leave their house or their town. But being in a band is something that I've always wanted to do. I didn't just want to be in a local band or just a cover band that plays on the weekends.
Well, let's talk about VOID VATOR, because which is great. Since you came to LA, the White Wizzard, GYPSYHAWK, VOID VATOR, all great bands, and more along the lines of just great traditional classic
rock
metal
and metal
stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Now you're on Ripple Records. You're doing it yourselves, and this is what I always say, and Matt and I always talk about on the podcast. It's really people like you, bands like you, that really are keeping the metal alive when it comes to creating new killer music. That's not following the trends. That's just playing great classic metal music, and it's few and far between. And you're out there pumping it. You got a couple EPs and singles out on Ripple Records, which is primarily Matt was telling me primarily like a stoner rock label, correct?
Well, yeah, it is. It's more of a stoner. And I think it's too. I know Bob makes a great point because the thing is also you got the rest of your band members, right? They're a little bit younger than you, correct? I mean, Lucas and Sam and them, But obviously those guys are like. It seems like you guys we met you guys and we saw you guys play. You guys are definitely like a tight unit. You know what I mean? Like. And,
what's funny? I'm sorry to interrupt, but we were just listening, and I obviously I seen you guys play, and I never really noticed, and we're just listening now. I'm going, man, that singer sounds a lot like John Bush from Armored Saint. Was he a big John Bush fan?
No, that's interesting. That's the first time I've heard that.
The way he phrases the words and stuff.
Well, he's from Uruguay, which is great.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, Lucas is just an insanely talented dude, all the guys in the band, and that's what I loved about moving here is finding people that still have this do or die passion and put music and being like achieving art, if you will, as the number one priority. And I'm stoked that you guys dig it. That's what we're doing. I think we have a lot that's new to offer, and I'm really happy that Ripple has noticed it. Ripple's a label that I was made aware of back in 2013, and I was on a tour that featured a band called Mothership.
Yeah,
and
sure.
They signed to Ripple. They become one of their biggest bands.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure they tour. They've done a lot since then and continue to. So
Texas, Dallas, right? Texas.
Yeah, they're from down. Actually, I want to say Fort Worth.
Fort Worth, okay. Same kind of thing, Dallas, Fort Worth.
It is to be a Dallas,
right next to it.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Total Texan boys, absolutely, like just true Texans. And so I was aware of them, and then as Void Vator got serious, we started touring regionally and then building our tours and wanting to get our music out and have people hear it. We want to get on a bigger platform. And, Todd, I run into him a few times from on different bands and different tours. And he got wind of it. And then finally we kind of reached out and started talking to each other. And he's like, you want to do a record? So here we are, stranded,
Awesome.
Are you doing a full-length record with the label?
Well, they re-released, right? Yeah.
When we re-released Stranded, we added songs to it and we remixed and remastered what we had. So it is a full-length record of 8 songs, kind of like old school. If you remember, albums used to be 8 songs.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
That was the standards. So and they released it on vinyl, which has been a dream of the band for a long time. So it sounds great. It looks great. And it's a full-length LP. And right now, what we've been doing since our last show, September 11th, is we've just been rehearsing and writing. And we have got and we'll have a full album in the bank before we do our next tour, which is actually to promote Stranded. Nice. Which is going to be happening starting in March. We're working on it now, but it looks like it's going to start March 11th in Vegas.
Awesome.
And so, Ripple, quick thing about Ripple that's neat and very important. You said that he's a stoner metal band, and yes, Todd, that's where he sank his teeth into. That was one of the scenes for like metal with melody. That wasn't just pure aggression and satanic death, black metal, which is funny because that's actually the main and has been the mainstream for a long time.
Sure, yep.
There's a huge portion of the metal audience that has kind of just been ignored and left without any real bands. So Todd sank his teeth into the stoner metal scene. But as that scene is kind of
it's starting to get a little stale. I mean, let's be honest. It really is. Yeah.
Exactly. And so Todd's looking to get into other bands that just don't fit that exact mold, and here we are. So that's what we have to offer. He likes what we're doing, and we can appeal to a lot of his audience, and it should be a great like mutual thing. But he's interested in new music. A lot of the labels are interested only in pushing what's been established 20 to 30 years ago. So that's where Todd is really pushing the new wave of what's happening next, and it's really exciting.
Well, that's what it's all about, man. And props to Todd for doing it.
Absolutely.
Because there's not many new labels that are really, I mean, and it's understandably so. They're not, they're not making the money like they did back in the day. So for new labels to come out and sign new bands, it's rare. I mean, you see a lot of these labels coming out, like the Frontiers and all that, which is great, but they're signing mostly heritage bands, man, from the 80s and even 70s, some of them, and or super groups or bands that were, guys. But, as far as there's and again, it is so great that, you've been doing this not just with Void Vator. And Void Vator, am I correct to say this is pretty much your band? You formed Void Vator?
Oh, no. I'd say it's predominantly Lucas's band.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
But I'm one of the original members with Lucas, absolutely. But yeah, Lucas is the Dave Mustaine of the band, if you will.
Oh, right on. Because so much different musically than what you did in White Wizard and particularly a GYPSYHAWK. So you've really moved on musically.
Yeah, you got definitely an array of flavors of your sounds for sure. The bands you've been in, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not just a one-trick pony.
Totally.
And I think that's important and kind of exciting, to be quite honest. When Void Vator was just getting off the ground, is to see if it was going to go anywhere. I was also in another band where I was singing and playing bass.
The Ironaut?
The Ironaut, which is a totally different, more of a...
That was more of a stoner.
Yeah, stoner thrash, though. It had some aggro to it, and more, rather than the really laid-back marijuana jams, It's definitely more coke method.
Yeah. No, I saw you guys when you guys played up here at Toots. I remember when you opened, I think it's for the Watchers and stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
I think you told me.
Yeah, I think I told you that when we saw you.
Great show, and with the Watchers.
With the Watchers.
Todd was there, too.
And Todd was there, yep. Absolutely, yeah.
That was awesome.
Yeah. And speaking of that, too, you mentioned something about, like you said, these traditional bands. I think California, specifically, has got a really cool... obviously, you guys are, if you look at... let's just take the, Northern California up here. You've got Haunt. Haunt's a great traditional heavy metal band. Down in San Diego, you got the Great Electric Quest. That band is, phenomenal live. A great fucking band. I've seen them, they played a show up here. A big fest up here in San Jose. They brought down a house here. So there is so much good new music out there with that traditional, like it's that whole new wave of traditional heavy metal, right? That's been going on for a little bit right now. That whole Nuwatham, what they call it,
Nuwatham.
Nuwatham. And so, there really is that stuff going on. It's just, it needs, and that's, like you said, that's what's great about Ripple. They're actually giving a platform for those, obviously for Void Vator. You've got a couple other labels that go around. You've got the Cruz del Sur. That's a cool label with Sanhedrin was on there. They're on there. And there is a little bit of a movement, kind of coming along with this traditional heavy metal stuff. Wouldn't you agree?
And you talk about Dallas, Texas, too. And another great band is a Power Trip. And they're actually making a lot of waves.
Power Trip is straight up hooked up. That's kind of like,
which is great to see.
Been the big band for about 2 years. They're in the big leagues. Actually.
Yeah, we saw them live in San Jose not too long ago, and the thing that I think is the key. We talk about the live show. How most bands just play in the basement. You hear these bands on record or streaming, and they got the great production, the Pro Tools. They sound big, and then you see them live, and you're just super disappointed. But bands like Void Vator and Power Trip totally deliver live. You could tell you guys are experienced live players, touring musicians that know how to entertain an audience. And that's, I think, is a key where so many of these newer bands are lacking. And,
great point.
It's great to see, man.
Well, I really appreciate that. You've seen a lot of absolutely legendary bands, and we do our best. I've been doing this for a long time. The dudes in Void Vator, Sammy is an absolute, just like a Duracell bunny that never stops. And Lucas, just not only does he sing and play goddamn incredible guitar, all brings everybody. Bringing the show is really important. There is an exciting scene that's up and coming. I would like to get away from everything being associated with new wave of traditional British heavy metal. But it had to start somewhere. And when I joined White Wizard, that was it's calling card 100%. Straight up new album. We're bringing it back.
And that was cool when that came out. Like, we're talking early 2000s, because you had all those.
That was 2010 when the record came out, which is a long time ago.
Yeah, it seemed like there was kind of a wave of bands. Warbringer, you had Havoc, you had Fueled by Fire,
that was
you had
the thrash scene.
You had Ex Mortis, you had Holy Grail coming out. I mean, all these, which I guess came out of White Wizard.
It did.
But so many great bands doing that traditional style. It seemed like it all came, and it was funny because you were just talking about how it all kind of started around 2007, 2008. What do you think was a push on that? Because it was all about that new metal stuff up until that point, and then you started seeing all these bands I just mentioned coming out kind of around that same time.
Well, we had talked about the resurgence of a lot of the 80s bands, anything from glam bands to the thrash bands, and they kind of reestablished their selling power, if you will. And I think it sent a message out to people that there is a big audience that misses this music, and quite honestly, just some money to be made, if you will.
Sure.
What typically happens when there's these there's the re-thrash scene. Now, that doesn't sound very like a complimentary tag, but you know what I'm saying, like the new thrash bands that were thrash bands, right? And then the new album scene. There was a whole just a new little movement that people were willing to invest in and see if it could build. But I think that's what sparked kind of like people's wheels turning, like to give this style of music a real chance. And I mean, the whole metal, I'm not into the metalcore scene whatsoever. Like, it just doesn't excite me. So there's other people like me and you maybe that feel the same way. But yeah, and so it did. And then, like, you remember there was a time when King Diamond, Twisted Sister, I remember when that stuff was so, like, if you mentioned that you were into shit like that, Dio's like, that was like super uncool. Like, you're fucking just
demonic.
Well, you're into the
demonic.
Dragons and Wizards and stuff. People thought it was Yeah.
And that was like a mid-90s.
Oh, the 90s.
Like Dungeons and Dragons kind of like connotation.
It was so
it.
uncool at that point.
It was, man. Like,
but in the 80s, it was totally freaking huge. It was everybody was, But sorry.
Yeah, it was just like kind of actually in the 80s. That's when it was like relevant, and Dungeons and Dragons has just also made a huge return. But that was like in its peak. It was just a whole cultural.
Well, I think it always was different in the U.S. U.S. was always based on the trends when the grunge came out and hit big, and the alternative, then the new metal. But in Europe, it always kept that. I mean, Europe was always they always had open arms for the. I mean, look at Manowar is one of the biggest metal bands in Europe still. And they've been since the 80s. They toured big arenas and stadiums out there, and they're as cliche as you could get.
My drummer Giovanni, who was in White Wizard, I'm like, I do not get Manowar. He's like, it's something you have to be. It's like either you get it or you don't. He's from Italy and stuff. And,
they just worship that stuff. Yeah.
What you talking about, man? I never got into Manowar.
Speaking of which, do you have plans on hitting Europe with Void Vator?
I would love to, one step at a time.
Sure.
One step at a time. But that's something that we talk about. And, the way things are, I do think there's this underground rock scene is right on the verge, Like, all it takes, it's so close to being like kind of a big underground thing, if that makes any sense. It only takes 100 people to have a successful show, 100 paid people, and then from there it kind of starts building itself, and it's so close to being that's so realistic, right? So that's just here in North America, which I've done a lot of touring over the past 10-15 years doing that. But yeah, we talk about getting over to Europe, and it's neat kind of looking, when I get the reports back from Apple Music or Spotify of where the music's being played. I know that this is a very realistic thing, and we just have to figure out how to get out there. Bands nowadays have to figure everything out, management-wise, connection-wise. Like, who do I need to contact? Who do I need to talk to? How do we do this? Have a guy who kind of like flips a coin and then everything happens, or waves a magic wand and poof, you're in Germany.
Do you have that at the label now? Like people that, because I know there's really obviously not the tour support that there was back in the day. But is there the marketing with the labels? Do they handle that, or do you have? Is it all self-sufficient? You have to do that yourself.
Okay, so what they do is they work the album. So Ripple Music will work music. So everybody's trying to work with what they can, but it's just not how it was, where it was like kind of an all-inclusive empire back in the day. You were hooked up once you got on the team, if you will. And so Ripple works the music, and we talk back and forth with just ideas of places we should be, or like kind of future, like, oh, let's release a 7-inch, or I'd talk about the packaging I'd like for the next record, etc., things like that. We work together, but predominantly what they do is get the word out for the music so people will listen to it. And then people that, like, if I call up so-and-so, they're not going to listen to me. They're not going to take me seriously. But, Ripple or their A&R, not A&R, their PR guys, they reach out, and it's completely different. That's how the world works. Sure. They knock down some of those doors. But as far as what you're talking about, like, and as far as I know, I would love for this to be a possibility. They can't make a phone call and next thing you know, we got a German tour. But, everything is building, and this is all kind of coming from the ground up. Mm-hmm. It's possible in the future.
Right well, how would you compare that? Because, I mean, you've been now on three, big labels. You've been obviously on Ripple now with VOID VATOR. You were with White Wizard. You were on ERIK, and of course GYPSYHAWK. We were with the legendary Metal Blade. I mean, so what would I mean? Obviously, it's a different time, but at the same time, just about all three of those bands have, all came within one decade, right? From about 2009 up until 2000, to now, about 2000.
Now, sure.
And so, I mean, do you see? I mean, because you've been able to obviously see the differences as years go by and how things change, the trends and everything like that. Is it kind of? I mean, obviously working with Ripple, like you said, you just said they're really all about getting the music out there, marketing the actual music itself and the the product itself. Would you say that's kind of similar to what ERIK did and Metal Blade, or is it?
No.
Huh?
No.
Wow.
Because there was ERIK and Metal Blade have more money, and they did invest some money. ERIK, I mean, it's like, and mind, let's see, how can I describe this? I'll try. ERIK invested more money. They got us across to Europe a number of times.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And so that costs a lot, man, to fly a band over, much less put them up. And Europe's like, England is insane expensive, dude. It makes LA look poor. And so to put up a band for like 2 weeks in London is insane. Now, Metal Blade, they kind of took care of the recording. And I don't know as much of the processes of ERIK or Metal Blade, but they didn't get us anywhere as far as, like, they didn't fly us to Europe, etc. Mm-hmm. So that was, they put out the record, and then there really wasn't any tour support. Okay. They seem to have, like, connections, though. Like, everything is different. It's not all the same. Everyone has their own separate connections. I believe that we got, they have rapport with different bands. I don't know how much they had to do with, like, the Sword tour that we got, or the Valiant Thor tour. Could have been a lot, could have been a little. Like, I know what's the pirate band?
Ailstorm. Yeah.
When we toured with them, that was just
that's a cool band.
The bass player's friendship with them.
Okay.
And it was just like a thing. But I mean, things, regardless of all of it, it's funny where it's still almost the same as being in a local band. Like, all the bands still had to pay for their own rehearsal space. Mm-hmm. It's not like you have this, imagine, like, country club, this magical country club that you go to, and there's like a bar and a swimming pool, and no, it's like the same day-to-day operation. It's just that you have a team that's working your record and trying to get you somewhere. But by and large, it just legitimizes things. Like it gives you, like, some more, like, it helps your morale. Mm-hmm. And it does help give a little bit of guidance, but it's still quite a bit on your own. I'd say ERIK has seemed to be have the most like outside influence beyond just putting the record out.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Ripple is mostly like, like we pay for the recording and everything, but like once we turn in the record, they work it.
Yeah. Well, that's the argument about getting on a label still, because so many people keep saying, oh, what do I need a label for? Oh, labels don't do shit. They take all the money that you make off streaming and all this. If you sign a deal, they're going to take this and that. But as you even said, when you go out to try to promote your record, they don't take you seriously. If a Metal Blade or if someone representative from Ripple calls, there is still that prestige of being on a label. If I get stuff,
Absolutely.
and I think all journalists and podcasters and whatever, if you get something from a band that pitches himself, or you get something from an ERIK or EMP label or a Nuclear Blast, you're going to check that out first and get that's something you're going to they're signed, or they have something special. And I think that obviously is the key for people. I mean, if you could do it yourself, you could obviously hire your own publicist and do it that way, but there is still, I think that's the only thing left for these labels. And pretty soon it might be all, because people are talking about how, some of these labels, how are they going to survive in the future? Particularly the major labels. It seems like the independents, the Nuclear Blast and the Metal Blades and the Century Medias are doing better than the majors now. The majors are doing exclusively 360 deals, all of them. Yeah. And
I don't know what they're doing with that. You know what? ERIK was a 360 deal. Metal Blade was not, and Ripple is not. So that's to kind of throw that out there. I don't even know.
Well, that's why you got the tour support to go to Europe from
sure.
ERIK.
From ERIK, yeah.
I mean, it's all different things that you try out. What I love about Ripple is it's we can try it out, and it's like one album at a time. Let's just see how it goes. We're really happy.
Well, it seems the guy from Ripple is a real fan. I mean, as was obviously Brian Slagle and all that. But for a new label to come out, you have to be a fan to put. And I understand he's pretty well financed as well. And he just does it more for the love of,
the music.
He's got his other, obviously his profession, but he's kind of doing this more of a love and because he's a fan of it.
And Todd's the kind of guy, you see him at all the shows. I mean, when you see a Ripple band is playing, he's always at those shows. I mean, always. And that's great. Obviously, as a band, if you're in a label and you've got, obviously, it isn't just like here, you just, we're going to pay for your record, we're going to pay, blah, blah, blah. But to actually get that support where the label's coming out and they're, going to your shows and they're really showing like that they're fans of the music and not because, they saw how many hits you got on social media or whatever it is. That's what's great. And obviously Ripple, like I was talking, Bob about that when I moved up here in the Bay Area in 2010, they were very, very, very small. I think they put out a couple of, I think re-releases or they had a podcast. I remember the Ripple Effect thing that Todd had. And they've just gone massive now. They're, like I was telling Bob, it really is one of the bigger, the biggest stoner. I don't want to say stoner because the fact that now they're transitioning to going not just have stoner bands, like you said, getting more to traditional heavy metal, but they're one of the bigger bands in the country. I mean, bigger labels in the country.
Definitely.
Right? That in terms of, that promotes.
They're number one in North America.
Sure, yeah, exactly.
The only other label I can think of off the top of my head is Shadow Kingdom because that's what Haunt's on.
Mm-hmm.
There used to be quite as I say, like 10, 15 years ago, there were quite a few of those stoner labels out there. Meteor City, the Music Cartel.
Well, those are back in the 90s. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What happened? Did they all just fall by the wayside? Or
Yeah.
See, Easy Rider, and I think like Heavy. I think it's just called Heavy. There's a few. I don't really
TP
pay attention
Records.
to them.
Yeah, Writing Easy. Yeah, sorry, Writing Easy Records. Yeah.
Things come up, things come and go. But in my particular world, when I go to shows, I mean, over and over, the label that's represented is Ripple.
Sure.
And that's partly due to proximity. I mean, the bands that I see on the touring circuit are West Coast a lot of times, and that's what's represented quite a bit. Although they just signed Bone Church, which is out of Connecticut. Okay. We played with them a couple shows this.
They just signed Wino, I believe, too, right? Isn't Wino? I think he's doing some solo stuff there, right?
So everything's different. We're giving it a shot. We're happy. We want to get our music out. You cannot. It takes a team. It takes a team effort to promote or do anything. One person's not from movies to sports teams to restaurants. You can't do it all yourself. That's ridiculous.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, man. So we're super happy, and like I said, we're planning this tour to go out, hit South by Southwest, get up to the Midwest, turn around at Detroit, and come home, and then we'll have another album, in the bank. Essentially, we're gonna record the drums right before we leave from tour, and then we'll finish the music right when we come back, and then we'll have so much to play with, so much new. Like we can release it when we want. It'll be ready, when it's time, when people want it. And we'll be out promoting the new albums. We'll be promoting Stranded heavily and throwing in some new songs. And we always just have fun, dude. I mean, it's kind of exciting because we just the world has changed so much. Like back in the day, it was like all or nothing, meaning it was like arenas or nothing. People even looked down at bands that were playing theaters, which is strange because that's kind of the ultimate. Shows are at theaters and clubs. Those are the best. Yeah. There's nothing more fun than just a packed like rock club, from like the Whiskey to Bottom of the Hill, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like so reasonable and possible. Just you only need 100, or now you got the club that's 200, and then your next step is usually like the 500, and then like as far as I'm concerned, that's like. If you make it that far, that's incredible.
Yeah, well, the clubs are still out there. I mean, more and more are closing up, especially, obviously, in Hollywood. I mean, you still got the Sunset Strip clubs. You got the ones downtown. Here, you got the ones in the Bay Area. And it's mostly touring bands that are really keeping these clubs. You don't have the local bands like you did back in the day. Just local bands going out, trying to make it. And it's kind of a sad thing. And, this brings us back, Erik, to something, we've talked about on the podcast so many times with so many of the legendary bands going. I mean, we just had a huge hit, obviously, with Neil Peart's passing. Yeah. To go off subject, but I mean, it's pretty amazing. I was just, I believe, talking to Matt about how they kept it a secret. He actually died 3 days previously to when they announced it, and it didn't leak out anywhere, and nobody knew that he had brain cancer. He apparently had it for over 3.5 years. And in this day and age, with all the TMZs, the tabloids, and everything else, social media, I mean, you got to really give it to the Rush camp for being able. I mean, usually if there's a death, isn't it in
the obituaries and stuff? Yeah, and the papers and stuff, right? So someone you think would be like, hey,
someone would
see Neil Peart, but Peart would be like,
oh my God, and word would get out. But how they were able to keep that a secret? But going back to what I was saying, the fact that, obviously Rush had, and I'm sure that's one of the main reasons they had,
why they retired.
Yeah. While they retired. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But, more of these bands are happening. It's really up to bands like the Void Vators, the newer metal bands playing just great traditional metal, their own original music, not trying to cover other bands, not trying to, pay tribute or copy this and that, doing your own thing. And, it's real sad that the fans aren't out there supporting it enough, because sooner or later, within the next few years, I mean, all the big bands that we see, all the arena bands. I mean, Malcolm Young passed away. All you got is Angus left. Once that goes, AC/DC, Rush is gone. UFO just did their final tour. Obviously, the Zeppelin's no longer touring. Who's hanging? I mean, all these bands are trying to get their last legs in, the Stones and the Who. But, dude, in the next 5 years, it's going to be gone. And people don't realize there's really nothing else.
Who's going to take the torch?
Absolutely.
Who's going to pass the torch
to? So great that you guys... Well, what?
We're going to be there. We're going to be there. I'm with you 1,000%. And what's like right now, the attention's not on it, but it so easily could be shifted. And I think, like you're saying, everyone's kind of getting their last kicks in before the whole shit house goes down in flame. And they're kind of just like milking. They're getting the last little bit of milk out of the cow.
Talk about milking it. Have you seen? Have you seen the footage of David Lee Roth in Vegas? Oh my God! Well, that's bad. The other thing that's sad is you're seeing all this, and yet, as bad as it is, and it has how so much video footage. Everyone's seen the footage. It's all over social media. People know, but they will still go and buy tickets to see him because it's David Lee Roth. It's the last time I'll see him. And these guys, you watch him, it's like he just doesn't give a shit. I don't know if he realizes how horrible he is, or he doesn't care. He's probably thinking, hey, people are buying tickets anyway. But you're getting that. A lot of these 80s bands, God bless them. I appreciate them going out there, still giving it a go, but a lot of them just suck. I mean, you don't have the younger generation, and that's, again, and not to kiss your ass, but bands like you guys are out there, a young, vibrant, kicking ass on stage, doing it like the old school way, and not just going through the motions. I mean, so many of the bands, they know people are going to want to see them for the very last time. So, that's why they're doing these retirement tours that last 10 years, But, I was
shocked with the Motley Crue.
I wasn't shocked.
Well, but here's the deal. As people, it is selling out. And I'm
that's a sellout.
Money talks. I mean, you couldn't fucking pay me to go see that tour, but people are excited, dude. Whatever works, man.
Yeah, that's the packaging, man. And because Def Leppard, they've been playing for years,
but they've sucked for you. I mean, Joe Elliott's
same with Poison. You
put
years. That package together. Motley Crue back from retirement. It's more hype than anything, Yeah,
it's all.
And Vince Neil is another one that's probably even worse than David Lee Roth.
Oh my God!
Come on,
Vince Neil, he is worse.
People, like you said, it's still people know. People are bitching. I said this before on a Three Sides of the Coin Kiss podcast. People know, but they'll buy tickets.
Still doing it anyway.
They'll bitch about Kiss. They'll say, "Oh, it's so expensive. Oh, I'm not going to go." But they'll go anyway. But
we've talked about a lot of it's because it's like rock. You don't even the younger generations. They have to dig so deep. At least when we grew up, it was there for we
was the pinnacle.
Exactly,
it was its climax. It was absolute perfect time. But I'll tell you this: like that crowd, I get it. They only go to 1 to 2 shows a year. It's like going to on vacation to Cancun. So it's like an experience, True. It's like the music's they've all heard it a million times.
But it's a horrible experience. Listen to the records. Watch the old videos. You don't want to see David. You don't want to go to Vegas to see David Lee Roth embarrass himself on stage. I'm sorry, but it's awful. You don't want to see Vince Neil embarrass himself.
I guess the question is one of those things. Well, what else? It's at least it's the real thing, even if it's bad. It's the real thing. And I think that's what people want more than anything is just, it doesn't matter if it's good. It's the nostalgic relation, the nostalgic part of it. It's just like, I know it sucks, but I'm still going to go. I just still want to see it, In
the meantime, it is a shame that, because what's happening is what's left of the big establishment, the big Illuminati industry is, that they're in it for a career, and that's where the money is, and that's where the attention goes. And it is a shame for the art of heavy metal itself that the relevant bands are being ignored over the dinosaurs who honestly need to go away. But that's how our society is, I mean, it goes with the money, and it is a finite material that is literally just not going to be here much longer. So in the meantime, the underground is growing, and it is relevant, and it is fun, and it is exciting for someone who wants to come up from the ground up with it, to see those bands that are going to take it to the next level. Very much as, I hear a lot of your guys' stories and seeing that Slayer Megadeth concert from 1985 and how awesome it was to see them at the Stone or wherever. What an amazing story. Or to be able to say that you saw the Rolling Stones or the Beatles and some of their first shows. Music is there. It's just, it takes people just getting interested again. And it's exciting and it's fun. And
well, you mentioned that because now it's time for, music always, obviously changes and stuff. And the shift is going to happen. And you mentioned that shift when all these bands do go away, that people aren't going to have anything else. And if they are at that point, going to start.
There's going to be an empty vacuum there for what, it's
there will be, yeah. It's maybe it'll all just fade away. I mean, that's kind of sad, but maybe we're the last ones.
Can't be.
Anything's possible.
You're right, though.
And it's, there's still kids that play instruments, and quite honestly, the thing that I'm not too worried about why I just don't give a fuck is that the alternatives are so fucking lame. They're so boring. You can't even tell me that.
It's not music. I mean, it's computerized.
So
it's auto tuner and drum.
There's no soul to it. There's no soul.
Mac laptops.
I mean, I can't. I don't know how. I'm kind of shocked there is a lot of power in Illuminati brainwashing. They bring these kids up. I mean, if I hadn't been subjected to the perfect storm, I mean, heavy metal saved my life because I would have been a dork without it, you know? Mm-hmm. It helped me get into it. Now, if somehow I hadn't been exposed to it ever, then who knows where I'd be. Right. Some dweeb working behind some desk somewhere.
Well, I think that happened with a lot of people. I think that was, you know, especially when, you know, the metal scene first started, like getting really big in the early 80s and really building. I mean, that's how it was with me. I was a dorky nerd in school, and metal was kind of the thing that I was able to grasp on. And it was like,
man. Sure, yeah. Most of us can say that.
Absolutely. And that's just me as a fan, you know, and being a part of something. And, you know, I'm sure so many musicians, they say that, and that's I see that power of music being gone. I mean, kids don't, you know, in general, they don't
really
want
sad for them for sure, you know, because we'll see how they turn out, but just imagine an entire civilization raised on the Backstreet Boys or Justin Bieber. Like, there's no chance of even being a cool person if that's your upbringing.
Yeah. Well, you know, you got to figure, people don't realize the kids, even kids in their 20s up to 30s, they weren't exposed to the real. That's what they grew up on the boy bands, and then all the you know, that was kind of their thing as young kids growing up. So they don't really know.
They don't. Like we were saying, even in the 80s, you know, the pop music in the 80s, it was rock driven still. I mean, Prince
was cool,
and everything. Right? It still had a you know, even Beat It, Michael Jackson. These are still kind of rock songs. Yeah.
You
know,
Egyptian about Bangles.
Yeah, exactly, man, exactly. So it's like they're not. I mean. Everything now, like you said, there's no instruments. It's all fucking SoundCloud, computerized bullshit, you know?
Like the new wave stuff, all those old videos. And I remember how much I hate it because I was a metalhead back in the 80s. And I watch it now, and I go, fuck, this shit is good. I mean, compared to what's out there
what you hear now, exactly,
I'm looking at the, you know, the musicianship and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like some of this shit was damn fucking good. I mean, missing persons and
it's a special time. It's a real special time in American and global culture that may or may not ever be attained again. I mean, things were dirt cheap. Life was awesome.
Yep.
You could live, you could party. I mean, there was a real sense of freedom and fun in the air, and it's kind of a tougher, like, more sterile time at the moment.
Well, it's all PC shit. I mean, everyone's afraid to say anything.
Yeah,
exactly.
God,
it's fucking horrible,
Don't
man.
even get me started.
I know, well, yeah.
Anti-rock and roll.
But you know, you do mention something about the expense in LA, and particularly now in the Bay Area where Matt and I are, where the Shockwave Skullsessions studio is at. You know, the expense, you know, we talked to bands, especially this new upcoming documentary, got a plug, the Bay Area Godfathers. We're doing the big screening next week at the NAMM at the the Metal Hall of Fame. It used to be called the Hall of Heavy Metal History. Now it's the Metal Hall of Fame award shows on Wednesday. But the expense now to live in the Bay Area or in LA, you can't be a starving musician. Back in the 80s, you could work at a record store, you could work at whatever, work part-time, or just, you know, just have 10 people
still have an apartment and go drinking at the Rainbow and go see Rat and Van Halen.
You can't do that
exactly. Or you get an apartment with a couple of your buddies and you can afford. Now you can't even. They won't even let you fucking do it. You can't do it.
Yeah. So many of the musicians in the Bay Area, they've all moved out. Sacramento, East, and a lot of them have been saying that, especially in the documentary. They say, you know, it's the art, and that's what drives the art. You can't have the art. It was an art community before, the Bay, and you can't have. It's all tech now, and it's all money driven. Everything is so money driven, and it's. Yeah, and they say it's like supposed to be like all anti-corporate, but it's like this is the most corporate ever.
Exactly.
You know? I mean, the tech companies are more corporate than any of the banks,
ultimate irony, exactly.
or any of the music or film industry. So it's kind of funny, but yeah, I mean, it is sad, and that's another reason why I think you have these, you know, communities that were so artistic and musically cultural. I've had so many, just amazing, you know, musical bands coming out of it. It's gone. It's long gone now. Yeah. There's no creativity.
If people can't afford to leave their house, you cannot have a scene. So it's going to be interesting. This is another like factor that we have to deal with, and how will the world end up? I mean, is it ever going to move to Oklahoma City? Is that going to be where it's going to happen?
I know, right? No, you're right though.
Pryor.
Or Idaho, Boise, Idaho, or what exactly, man. No, totally.
Well, that's
and have some drinks. You know, you have to be able to go to these shows that are in clubs. You have to be able to afford to drink. You have to be able to afford to. Nowadays, you got to take a Lyft or an Uber there and back.
True. Yep.
You know, you got to have a place. So these are all things that are shifting, and right now we're kind of on a cusp. But things are getting figured out here and there, you know. But it's an interesting time, and we're definitely in this fucking limbo place. So in the meantime, if you are a rocker and you do enjoy heavy metal music, check out Void Vator.
Absolutely.
Why don't you throw up some of your social media pages and what?
I mean, it's Void Vator, VOID VATOR. Everything from Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube. We got our Instagram page. We got a Twitter. We got a Facebook. We got a website that, Jesus Christ, I haven't been to a website besides like airline websites in forever, but we do got one. You know, we got a big cartel store. We got a Bandcamp page with all our music, all our merch. So it's real simple. Type in Void Vator, VOID space VATOR, and just hit enter on Google, and you'll see about 7,000 suggestions.
Right.
Awesome.
And directions.
All right, Eric. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, man. Well,
always
thanks.
Great talking with you, man.
Yeah, always, man. Thanks again. Yeah.
I've been a big fan for a long time. I'm a fan of what you're doing. Your conversations are worth listening to. You know, you get guests who, if the guest I know, he's going to tell a new story that I've never heard. You're going to talk about something besides the cliches, and you have a true passion for beyond exposing some of the bands that were never talked about to bands that are not being talked about and are now. And it's really cool, man. And that's what this entire heavy metal scene is about. And it is an exciting time. So I wish you guys the best, and thanks for having me.
All right. Well, I appreciate that, man.
Yeah.
And I got to give
pleasure,
thanks to
man.
Matt for bringing the Skull Sessions back. If it wasn't for him to encourage me to bring back the Skull Sessions with him, it would have never happened.
Well, like you said, Eric, he said he's been a fan for a long time, as have I. So it's like it's needed. You know, like you said, this is another thing that's needed is getting, you know, something like the Skull Sessions with Bob and people who, like you said, have that passion for metal, and it's not just, you know, and especially for a lot of younger fans, you know, this is a cool thing. You know, obviously, Eric, man, like you said, you guys are kicking ass with Void Vator, man. We thank you so much for coming on, man, and we look forward to definitely seeing you guys next time you're up here in the Bay Area for sure. And
you will be back this year for sure.
Well,
awesome,
keep us
man.
Posted for sure.
Yeah, great.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for having me.
All right, man.
Thank you for listening to the Shockwave Skull Sessions podcast. Subscribe and listen to all episodes by going to our pages on iTunes, Spreaker, YouTube, Spotify, and more. You can listen to all other episodes and access up-to-date information and news on the Shockwave Skull Sessions podcast by going to our website at www.shockwaveskullsessions.com. Email all comments, questions, and suggestions to shockwaveskullsessions@gmail.com.